and end up looking a little bit sloppy for the duration that you're off cycle, it comes back super, super fast. It's only been 6 weeks, guys. 6 weeks of phenomenal change. Vigorous Steve here. So I took my progress pictures this morning and I actually look half decent. Certainly a lot better than I did 2 weeks ago when I wasn't really ready to show my physique yet in the previous blood work update. Now I also did my blood work yesterday, so we'll discuss that in this video as well. I look a lot better than I did 6 weeks ago when I started this cycle, where I kind of looked like a bag of smashed ashole, so I'm not going to bore you guys with those pictures. Instead, I'm going to compare these progress pictures to the ones that I took mid-February at the end of my previous cycle when I was running about 600 milligrams of steroids in total per week. So we'll do those head-on-head comparisons in this video, comparing the zero progress that I've made over the last 5 months. But hey, I'm just training to maintain and trying to keep myself as healthy as possible. We'll discuss the blood work from 2 weeks ago to the blood work from yesterday. And before we do, please like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell button while you're at it so you can get notified when a new video drops. As a quick reminder, this is the cycle that I ran up until mid-February where I took these progress pictures. Keep in mind, guys, please be aware that I'm solely relying on muscle memory. I don't think it's possible to develop a physique like this just using 600 milligrams of anabolic androgenic steroids per week unless you have phenomenal genetics. I'm solely relying on muscle memory. I used to use much higher dosages and I used to be much bigger and much heavier in the past as well. I'm just trying to maintain what I've built over these last 23 years that I've been bodybuilding actively, of which I've been using performance-enhancing drugs for the last 12 years or so. So I'm just trying to maintain, guys. Keep that in mind. If you were to do a cycle like this, or the cycle that I'm running currently, your mileage might vary. Now, fast forward to today when I'm running this cycle. You're going to have to wait a little bit because this cycle is a little bit complicated, so it takes a little bit longer to display it on the screen. All right, hopefully that's enough time. Fast forward to today, this is what I look like. I would say that it's very comparable to the progress pictures from 5 months ago, but I've had a long, significant down period in between. I took some time off from PEDs, allowed my blood work parameters to come back within healthy ranges, took some time off from the gym, allowing my connective tissue to heal. My knees are still a little bit wishy-washy. They're a little bit better compared to how I ended the previous cycle, partially because I'm using nandrolone, partially is because I'm doing a lot of deep tissue massage therapy on my quads and glutes and all of the connective tissue around my knees. And I switched to subcutaneous administration. So I'm no longer suffering from this tremendous scar tissue that was building up in my glutes. Still, my knees haven't been the best as of late, certainly not the best where they were when I was 30 years old or 25 years old. And just load up the equipment and rip and tear and rape and pillage and make sweet love to the weights like there was no tomorrow and no ramifications at a later age. But here we are, a little bit older with the knee pain. So I have to train a little bit more deliberately. I changed my rep range from about 6 reps to 9 to 12 reps. I feel that my legs are suffering a little bit and I'm not entirely sure if I can get them back unless I really ramp up the pharmacology, which at that point in time I'm not really willing to do. I'm taking enough sets to failure that the volume has returned, but I'm not training intensely enough. I'm not eating enough, not taking enough PEDs to really get my legs back to where they used to be in their prime. So I'm just trying to maintain, guys. I feel that my legs are suffering a little bit, but again, the knee pain is holding me back slightly. So hopefully I can keep them here while I'm dieting. And then maybe when I increase the food a little bit later, maybe 4 to 6 weeks from now when I should be done with this diet, lean enough to reintroduce a little bit of carbohydrates and increase my caloric intake, maybe then my quads will improve slightly. And again, still, then I'm solely relying on muscle memory. I don't think they're going to improve beyond my previous best of, let's say, 2 to 3 years ago. So all in all, besides the quads being down a little bit and the back being down a little bit, the body fat levels being slightly higher compared to the previous pictures 5 months ago. And again, back then I was doing months of dieting and this has only been 6 weeks of dieting. I would say that they look pretty comparable. Now keep in mind that I was off cycle and not looking anywhere close to this for the time in between. So that means that you can get back to your previous all-time best of your previous cycle within a reasonably short period of time. That's why I don't see it's an issue to come off cycle and end up looking a little bit sloppy for the duration that you're off cycle. it comes back super, super fast. It's only been 6 weeks, guys. 6 weeks of phenomenal change. If you have a decent amount of muscle memory and a decent work ethic, you can get your physique back in no time. Only 6 weeks. Let's say 2 weeks from now, I look very comparable to what I did 5 months ago. And then I still have months, if I want to, left on my cycle to make progress. Keep that in mind. It's not the end of the world to come off cycle. And even though you look a little bit sloppy in the meantime, you have so much extra time to take care of your health, so much extra time to take care of your nagging injuries, which of course we're all neglecting to let that recover and heal because you're on cycle, you want to train, you want to set PRs, etc., etc. So all those nagging injuries kind of build up. So you need some down period, some downtime to take care of that as well, giving you a better state of health and longevity to keep going. Let's move over to the blood work results. This time I didn't check as many markers. Again, this is only mid-month blood work updates. I do a full blood work panel at the start or end of each month and inform you guys. Those videos are going to be very, very long. This is just a small blood work update video to see which of the experimentations and the adjustments I made 2 weeks ago are now playing out. Let's start with high sensitivity C-reactive protein. On the previous blood work results, my CRP levels was 3.5 milligrams per liter. And now it's increased with 8.6% to 3.8 milligrams per liter. Keep in mind, I'm not taking any curcumin supplementation because I want to see how decadurabolin organon and now this underground lab of decadurabolin is affecting my blood work. So even though the numbers on paper are quite comparable, it's still an 8.6% increase. So now I'm not entirely sure if the organon decadurabolin or the underground lab decadurabolin are causing similar levels of inflammation, or it's something else that I'm doing that is causing inflammation, and both of these compounds are not doing anything negative to my blood work parameters, or it's all overlapping and compounding with each other. So what I'm going to do, continue with the underground lab decadurabolin, but take some of the injectables out, one of them being the injectable ATP. I'm going to leave that out for now. I haven't used that very, very long. And even though the pumps are absolutely phenomenal and the workouts are highly intense, again, I get more benefits out of the decadurabolin because it's helping with joint lubrication in the knees. And the pumps I get from the ATP, I can get somewhere else. So I'm going to take that out, retest my CRP levels in about a week or so. That's usually enough time for CRP levels to come down to baseline. And again, if my CRP levels stay elevated, then I'm just going to take everything out that's not pharmaceutical grade and then retest at the end of this month. And even though I know that I can cut my high sensitivity C-reactive protein readings down by about half or so with curcumin C3 complex supplementation, that's not what I'm going to do. I want to see how these compounds affect my inflammatory markers separately, so I know how to use them safely or which compounds I can use going forward and not rely on supplementation to get these markers down, which would otherwise give me a false negative for systemic inflammation. So you might think that a CRP of 1.7 milligrams per liter is good enough to keep going, when in reality, the curcumin C3 complex is crushing it down by 50%. In reality, the high sensitivity CRP is 3.8 or 4 or maybe even higher, which is surely an indication of systemic inflammation. So going forward, I'm going to figure out which compound is actually causing my CRP to go up beyond 0.5 to 1 milligrams per liter, where I feel comfortable having my inflammatory markers at. I'll figure it out and make the correct adjustments going forward. Moving over to my serum lipid levels, my total cholesterol came up with 10.3% from 97 to 107 milligrams per deciliter. Triglycerides came down with 22% from 36 to 28 milligrams per deciliter. HDL came up with 14.3%, 28 to 32 milligrams per deciliter. And LDL also came up with 19.6%, 56 to 67 milligrams per deciliter. So all in all, total cholesterol, HDL, and LDL came up while triglycerides came down. The only real adjustment that I made was adding 500 milligrams citrus bergamot in the morning and in the evening. So that's 1,000 milligrams of citrus bergamot per day. It raised, if this is a root cause, it raised my HDL, also raised my total cholesterol, and also raised my LDL levels. Now, at the same time, I discontinued the terkesterone and ecdysterone. Based on previous blood work results, I didn't really see a change on my serum lipid levels after adding in or discontinuing the terkesterone and ecdysterone. Still, it's worth mentioning, those are the only real adjustments that I made. I added in the citrus bergamot and removed these phyto or ecdysterones. Keep that in mind. I would say that it's a normal fluctuation on your total cholesterol levels. My diet didn't change. My cardio didn't change. My overall cycle didn't really change besides removing the terkesterone and ecdysterone. So I would say that this is a normal result, a normal fluctuation between both blood work results. Moving over to the liver enzymes, which are also very comparable, also slight variations compared to the previous results. My AST went up from 50 to 55, an increase of 10%, and my ALT went up from 44 to 48, an increase of 9.1%. I would say that, again, this is a normal fluctuation. Let's see what happens. The next blood work results, will these levels come down, my lipids and liver enzymes? Well, they keep going up with an increment of 10%. Because, well, whoop-de-doo, no surprise here. The longer you stay on diet and the longer you use performance-enhancing drugs, generally speaking, the worse your blood work is going to be. So I prefer to keep it here and not get it any worse on my lipids or liver enzymes. But I will still have to keep my eye on it and make the appropriate adjustments going forward if my liver enzymes or HDL and LDL ratio gets any worse. Moving over to the sex hormones. Removing or reducing my DHEA and pregnenolone by half. I went from 50 milligrams DHEA down to 25 milligrams. And the pregnenolone I took down from 25 milligrams per day down to 12.5 milligrams per day. My estradiol went down with 9.7% from 48.7 to 44 picograms per milliliter. A small reduction, not a notable reduction. My progesterone went down a little bit higher with 16.7% from 0.18 to 0.15 nanograms per milliliter. So all in all, I would say that that's a normal to be expected reduction of the estradiol and progesterone after taking the DHEA and pregnenolone out. I didn't retest my serum testosterone levels because, again, the last time they were 820 nanograms per deciliter, and reducing the DHEA and pregnenolone slightly, I would not expect too much of a significant reduction in my total free and bioavailable testosterone levels, which I now, in hindsight, kind of regret. Because when you look at my DHEA sulfate levels, they came down with 50.2%, which again is a little bit too expected when you slash your DHEA supplementation by half. A reduction of 50.2% from 634 to 316 micrograms per deciliter. So going forwards, again, in 2 weeks from now, I will retest my total free and bioavailable testosterone levels yet again to see if I need to make further adjustments to my TRT plus nandrolone plus primobolan plus Anavar dosing protocol. I will keep my pregnenolone supplementation exactly the same at 12.5 milligrams per day because my progesterone levels are pretty good. So just want to keep it right there. I will increase my DHEA supplementation intake to 37.5 milligrams. Hopefully, this will give me middle top of the reference range DHEA sulfate levels. Again, previous time on 50 milligrams supplemental DHEA, I was super physiological on my DHEA sulfate. Let's say 10% out of the reference range. And right now I'm in the middle of the reference range on 25 milligrams DHEA per day. So going to 37.5 milligrams, hopefully, fingers crossed, will bring me around 450 to 500 micrograms per deciliter in range, but towards the top of the reference range. And what also came down are my SHBG levels. Keep in mind that my estradiol came down with 9.7%, but my SHBG came down with 25.7%. Partially of that is coming due to removing the terkesterone and ecdysterone. I speculate, again, I'll have conclusive blood work at the end of this month. If SHBG came up, then the cause of that is because terkesterone and ecdysterone supplementation is able to somewhat sustain SHBG levels on a cycle of 500 to maybe 750 milligrams of steroids per week. And if it remained exactly the same, then it's simply due to the duration of time that I've been on cycle. In most cases, when you do daily microadministrations, your SHBG levels will keep declining, at which point they will reach a baseline and kind of stabilize. So whether that's on 14 nanomoles per liter or 10 nanomoles per liter, that remains to be seen. So all in all, my SHBG came down with 25.7% from 14 to 10.4 nanomoles per liter. Part of that, again, the reduction is due to the estradiol being reduced, Part of that is being on cycle for longer with daily micro administrations. Part of that potentially is due to removing the testosterone and ecdysterone. And keep in mind, with a daily influx of androgens, as well as 2 IUs of growth hormone, which is also known to reduce SHBG levels, a daily influx of 10 to 18 IUs of insulin, which is also known to reduce SHBG levels. I'm using 25 micrograms T3, which is known to increase SHBG levels. And again, estradiol is known to increase SHBG levels, but that actually went down over these last 2 weeks. So I'm trying to keep everything as stable as possible. I'm not changing anything to my PED intake. The timing of the day is exactly the same. The dosing protocols will stay exactly the same. The only thing that I'm going to do is add 150 milligrams testosterone and 150 milligrams ecdysterone. The DHEA will increase with 50% from 25 milligrams to 37.5 milligrams, which to be expected probably will raise my estradiol levels back up between 44 to 48 picograms per milliliter. Again, stay tuned for the blood work results dropping 2 weeks from now, which will have my final say on the subject. Now, before you say that my SHBG levels are so abysmally low because my growth hormone levels are so phenomenally high, that was only administered 5 minutes before. I administered 2 IUs growth hormone intravenously to see if this growth hormone that I'm using right now is legitimate. And as you see from my blood work results, it's undetectably high, over 100 nanograms per milliliter. So again, that's 2 IUs growth hormone intravenously, 5 minutes, a mere 5 minutes before drawing blood to see if the growth hormone that I'm using right now is legitimate. So based on these results, I would say that the anabolic pharmacist Norditropin growth hormone is absolutely legit. I love you, bro. So I don't think that a 2 IU growth hormone administration is able to significantly reduce SHBG levels within a window of 5 minutes. I could be mistaken here, but I don't think that's the case. So going forward, I'm not going to reproduce this experiment because now I know that the Norditropin is legit. It's just my liver that is a little bit lazy to produce IGF-1. So in my previous results with a nighttime administration of 2 IUs growth hormone before bed, my serum growth hormone levels upon waking were 2.8 nanograms per milliliter, which is about half of what they usually are, around 4 to 5 nanograms per milliliter, indicating slight downregulation of natural growth hormone secretion the next day. My IGF-1 levels were quite low, 128 nanograms per milliliter, so I suspected maybe my growth hormone is not accurately dosed. That's why I did this experiment of 2 IUs growth hormone intravenously, after which, well, in this very short window of time of 15 minutes, I believe, that growth hormone is active in serum. For that window of time, my serum growth hormone levels were over 100 nanograms per milliliter, which is an increase of 3,471.4% for the 15 minutes that it was biologically active. It did not change my IGF-1 levels. It went from 128 to 135 nanograms per milliliter, which is an increase of 5.5%. So based on my SHBG levels, which is coming from the liver, and based on my IGF-1 levels, also coming from the liver, I would not say that this bolus administration of 2 IUs growth hormone intravenous had any significant effect. My IGF-1 levels are comparable, and even though my SHBG levels came down significantly, there's more factors leading into the SHBG levels compared to the IGF-1 levels. So I would just say that my liver is still a little bit lazy to produce IGF-1. If I wanted to raise my IGF-1 levels, I would need to look into exogenous IGF-1, which I'm not willing to spend the extra money on because, to be completely honest, I'm pretty happy with how I look already. And considering that my IGF-1 levels are somewhat low for overall bodybuilding aspirations, they are favorable for anti-aging and longevity purposes. And if I already look like this within 6 weeks of a cycle, I mean, changing my IGF-1 levels higher, I don't think it's going to make a significant impact. And using exogenous IGF-1 is just going to increase my PED bill, which is already a little bit higher than I'm willing to admit. So my IGF-1 will stay exactly like this. I'm not going to do anything to increase that any further. My liver is just a little bit lazy as I'm getting older to produce additional IGF-1. I've had it up to 300 nanograms per milliliter on a decent dose of growth hormone in the past. But I think this is just going to be the level that I end up with. So going forward, I'm not going to make too many changes. I will do full blood work at the end of this month. For now, I will reintroduce the terkesterone, reintroduce the ecdysterone, increase the DHEA from 25 milligrams to 37.5 milligrams per day. Everything else is going to stay the same. The supplements are going to stay the same, and the PEDs are going to stay the same, besides that I'm going to take the injectable ATP out because I want to see if my inflammatory markers are being raised due to that compound, and otherwise the DECA is coming out as well. Depending on the results and the progress that I'll make over the next 2 weeks, I might increase my anabolic androgenic steroid intake or maybe add in a little bit of masterone to help with water retention, which I'm experiencing at the end of the day. Again, masterone, I'm not expecting too much anabolism out of it, but it's more of a cosmetic enhancing drug to complement the testosterone, the primobolan, the anavar, the nandrolone that I'm already running. So stay tuned for that update. I will change the T3 to GC1, so be Tyrome, if I pronounce that correctly, to see if the GC1 is able to sustain and improve my metabolism beyond the 25 micrograms of T3 that I'm running, and see how that affects my thyroid panel. Again, I will check my total free T3, T4 levels, and as well as my thyroid stimulating hormone before making that change, and then see which compounds I need to remove or reintroduce depending on my inflammatory markers. Stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this video was insightful and helpful regarding your own performance-enhancing drug journey and how you interpret your own blood work results. Let me know down below in the comment section what you would like to see from me next. Thank you guys so much for watching. You can find everything that I'm associated with down below in the YouTube description section. Have a look at some of my sponsors and affiliates. Use those discount codes so you can save yourself some money while shopping online. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok at VigorSteve, a Vigorous crew. You guys know what to do. A frontal bicep for you guys. Pretty damn good, but not phenomenal. Not just quite yet. Maybe if I increase the dose a little bit and keep dieting a little bit longer, a little bit, and maybe eat a little bit less, which I'm already eating a tiny amount. I'm still surprisingly full. All right, enough rambling. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.